Welcome. We are happy to see you here, and we appreciate you coming out to learn about the college application journey. My name is Cindy Stauffer, and I think I know pretty much everybody in the room since it's A through K, part of the alphabet. We have another meeting coming in from 7 to 8. So we're going to try to stay right on topic. If you have questions, if you'll save them till the end, and we'll try to take some questions. Let's open in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this sweet group of parents and their students. Lord, we pray for the journey that is ahead of these juniors. We pray that you'll give them a vision for what you have for them, Lord. We pray that you'll encourage them and open doors, show them what you have and what you've gifted them with. And we pray that this will be a time of growing closer together for the parents and their student. We thank you for our many blessings, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, first thing, the college application process. Yay! Who is excited about it? Raise your hand. Thank you, Jaden. Jaden is excited. Okay, first thing I like to say is two very important things to remember. This says college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. And I like to say that in a different way. Run your own race, okay? When you start the college application process, it becomes immediate that there are lots of different ideas about what college might look like. And it can be scary. You may think that you're on track with your student, and all of a sudden they talk to their friend, and their friend's got, maybe they've taken the ACT 15 times, and maybe they've applied to 10 schools, and they've been in summer program, and they start to pull out all the things they've done, and it becomes very scary quickly to students, and then the students bring that home, and it can become scary to you too. So there's a college for everybody if you want one. There are so many different kinds of colleges, so many different levels of colleges, so many different things that they're looking for in a student. So I really encourage you, students, to run your own race. You don't talk about your process and what you're thinking about unless you're fully confident and it's not going to make you nervous. You just keep doing the next right thing. We welcome you to come see us, high school counselors, to talk about it at any time. And we welcome all of you to make individual appointments if you'd like to talk about the specifics of your student and what might be a good journey, a good place for them to start. Okay, this is an overview of the whole process. First thing, the 1st of August, college applications open for some schools. Some of them are a little bit later in August. So this is one thing that a lot of parents don't realize. The college application process is front-loaded senior year. So when you arrive, college applications have just opened. So it's important to have your head in the game a little bit early. Some of the applications will include essays. The applications are quite a bit different depending on which college you're looking at. There is a form called the FAFSA. Are you familiar with that form? It's the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. That's what the FAFSA is, and all of you will be filling out that form at some time, even if you don't plan to use financial aid. It's a requirement for some schools and for scholarships, even merit academic scholarships. You still will need to fill out the FAFSA, and that will be opening the 1st of October. We'll talk about that a little bit more on a different slide. Next thing, once your student has done the college applications, we in school counseling send colleges the transcript and send any teacher letters of recommendation. Also, students will be sending ACT scores to the colleges. So all these parts start to meet up. The student does the application, the counselor sends the transcript and the letters of recommendation. The student also sends their ACT score, and those all match up to create an electronic file at each college, and that's what they use as the basis for acceptance. Next step in the process, we like our students to all apply for the Tennessee Promise. The Tennessee Promise, you've probably heard about it. It's for Tennessee residents. It's the 2 free years Usually for our students, it's at Pellissippi. It's at a community college like Pellissippi or maybe Roane State, depending on where you live. And that is a benefit that every student who graduates from a Tennessee high school and is a resident of Tennessee, that's a free benefit. So we like everybody to apply for it because you never know what's coming. And I had a lot of students who, at the last minute, were calling me saying, hey, did I apply for the Tennessee Promise? Once COVID hit, many students did not want to spend that money going out of state or going far away just to have virtual classes. And they said, I think I'll just save that money, do Tennessee Promise, and wait until the next year to go to my college. The problem was some of those students had not met the deadline of applying by the 1st of November. So we like all of our students to apply for Tennessee Promise just in case. And for some students, it's a great primary plan because some students will say, hey, I've got a lot of years ahead of me. I'm going to go to graduate school, and I know that now. So they will save the first 2 years' money and put that toward graduate school down the road. So there's a lot we can say about Tennessee Promise. The bottom line is it only takes 15 minutes to apply for and a social security number, and we can make that happen. So keep that on the radar. As part of the process, if your student has taken dual enrollment classes, we will need to have the transcript sent from Bryan College to the college where they're going to attend, and ACT scores, I mentioned that. Also, if your student plans to play a sport, they need to register for the NCAA by the end of junior year, so we can send transcripts at the end of junior year and double check all the classes that they've taken. Okay, senior year at a glance, as I said, October 1st. College applications open sometime August 1st, college applications open, and the Tennessee Promise opens also. October 1st, the FAFSA opens, the financial aid form. November 1st is when we like all of our students to have all of their college applications done. So this is a shock to many. August 1st, they're open, and we want all of them completed by November 1st. And the reason we do that is because when the college applications open, say it's University of Tennessee and your student wants to go there, when they open, there are like maybe 5,000 slots for new students. But as time goes on, they start to fill those slots. So we like our students to take advantage of the fact that all the slots are open when they apply. Also, some schools have early application deadlines, and if you meet those deadlines, you'll hear earlier whether or not you're accepted. Some colleges want you to apply early in order to be able to apply for their scholarships. So we have determined that if your student is finished with all of their applications by November 1st, then they're going to be in good shape for scholarships, for finding out about acceptance, and also for having time to apply for the Tennessee Promise. The FAFSA deadline, it opens October 1st, and it needs to be accomplished by February 1st. And then May 1st is when your student will be making their college decision. Many students know long before May 1st where they're going to go. But for very selective colleges, sometimes you won't hear back about what kind of financial aid they'd like to give your student until maybe March, and sometimes early April. And sometimes their admissions decisions are that late also. Like in March, you're finally hearing whether or not you were accepted to the school. So that's why May 1st is the date. And that's a date where you formally say, yes, I'm going to go to this college. You let the other colleges that you were accepted to know, thank you, but I'm going to be attending a different institution. And we have a celebration here where our students tell their classmates what their plan is, and we have a big lunch after it, and we make a big deal of College Decision Day. Okay, Naviance is a system, that is our college application. It's also got some career parts of it. And that is a system that all of our juniors should be able to get on by now. We've been into the classroom several times this year. We've reset passwords, and we have made sure that they can get on that, because Naviance is going to be a primary way that college materials move. Like teachers will post letters of recommendation on Naviance. I can then go in and send those letters of recommendation to a school. Counselors will post transcripts on Naviance so they can be sent directly to a college. And it helps us track what materials are where. The student, every time they apply for a college, they will go on to Naviance and say, I've just applied for this college. I need you to send my transcript. And so this just helps us keep on top of all the different things that are flowing over those first 3 months of the school year. So students will add colleges. They can also go on to Naviance and find out more about majors they might be interested in by watching some career videos. There's a whole thing on there called Road Trip Nation. And this was a busload of students from Emory University. They decided that high school students did not know enough about what the career options were. Because, really, students have a hard time knowing all these things that are out there. They know what their parents do. They know a handful of careers, but they don't know all the possibilities. So this was a busload of students that went out and interviewed professionals all over the U.S. And there are little videos that talk about all these different things. I showed the students how to use them last week. But if you want to know as a parent, I'm happy to show you that too. You will have a log-on. If you're interested in getting on Naviance now, like over the summer, please contact me. I'm happy to set your password up and get you going on Naviance so you can see how powerful the system is and we can show you how to use it. So like I say, this is key. Also, your students have been developing a resume on Naviance. Our goal this coming year is to have the college application process be really easy for your students. So in their English class, they're all developing an essay. So that will be a possibility for their college essay. That's traditionally been the hardest part. Like students get going with the essay, with the college application, and then they just sort of stall out. And I'll say, well, how's it going? And they'll say, yeah, everything's good but my essay. So we decided this year we're just going to draft one up in English class so we'll be ready with an essay. They may tweak it, they may change it slightly, but at least they have one essay ready to go. Similarly, we decided to do resumes in Naviance in the classroom this year so that they don't have to try to remember, like, how many clubs was I in and what did I do for community service and have I ever led anything? And we're thinking through all that and adding it onto their resume on Naviance so that's ready to go when they open their college application and get going. So what do colleges look for? Colleges do a holistic review of the student. So that includes things like grade point average. It includes the ACT score. It includes all parts of the college application to include the essay. On the transcript, they'll also look at the rigor of the classes that they're taking. How many honors, AP, dual enrollment. Has the student continued to push themselves hard the first semester of senior year? Because they will ask, what are you taking this year? Like, we've got the transcript that only covers freshman, sophomore, and junior years, but what are you doing this year as they're applying? What is your schedule this year? And they'll look to make sure that, the seniors are continuing to challenge themselves. They'll look at any leadership experiences. So I challenged the students as they were doing their resume. If you see big holes in your resume, like I gave them some categories, like leadership. If you have nothing that you can think of to put under leadership, this summer is an opportunity. Try to find something to lead. It might be the crafts in Vacation Bible School at your church. It might be something small, but try to find something because colleges do like to see that you can be a good teammate and a good classmate, but also a leader when required. Look at extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, we call them sometimes, anything that's been done at the school outside of the classroom. So that can be sports, clubs, anything else that is school related. They also look at community service. So we know that everybody, when they graduate from CAK, will have some community service because we require that freshman and sophomore years. I also really encourage the students to get the capstone done this coming summer so it can be used on the college applications. Also, it can be used to fill some holes. So if your capstone is leading something, good, that's another leadership thing. If your capstone is doing something in community, that can fill the community service hole. Also, job shadowing. I said, if you haven't done a job, put a category on your resume and try to get a job this summer so that you have something to put under job experience. And if not, if you don't have time to do that, but you're doing a capstone that's job shadowing, that's still going to give you some job experience. So that will give you something else to put on the resume. So the final thing that colleges look at are letters of recommendation from teachers. We like for each student to, you're going to talk more about letters of recommendation. Okay, so those are letters of recommendation usually from high school teachers. So we say, find a teacher who you've done well in their class, they kind of know you, they get you, they understand you as a person and as a student, so they can write you a really solid letter that's going to make a college feel like, this is the student I want. I can tell that teacher really knew that student. Okay, college visits. We do allow college visits senior year, three visits senior year, right? 2 junior year. Okay, so those are considered, we really don't have much in the way of excused and unexcused absences. There's a 10 absence policy, but we do have a form where if you know you're going on a college visit, students, you get the form from the front desk, you get it signed by all your teachers, and we record that those 3 days were college visit days. So if you were to bump up against your 10 absence, if you were having an absence problem, then we would take that into account that those were college visit days. So we encourage you to go and visit colleges, but I know not every family can go out and visit. We ran into that in our family with our kids. Like, we just can't always be running around to all these colleges. And I said, I don't think that should stop you from applying, and especially now that they have so many virtual visits. You can Google any college admissions, and I think all of them these days have a virtual tour you can do of the college. I also really encourage the students to call and talk to the college admissions officer. So you can usually find it on the website, but if not, you can just call the college admissions office and say, who is our admissions counselor for East Tennessee or for the Knoxville area? And that's a person, if that's a college you really want to go to, that's a person you want to get to know, and the student should be the one trying to get to know them. They'll tell you all kinds of things, like special programs that they have that might not be real visible. I mean, we recently, I was using as an example, I toured Samford with my own student who was interested in business, and while we were there, they said, oh, there's this really cool thing we have in business called sports marketing, but it has a whole separate application, and I had not seen that anywhere. So if you're really interested, students and parents, in a certain college, talk to that admissions counselor and spend a lot of time looking at the fine details on the admissions website. Also, go into what majors they have and make sure that the majors offered by the colleges are things that might really appeal to you and might eventually lead to a career. So I told the students, go behind the list. Go behind and see what classes you have to take with each individual major and try to figure out, do those sound like things that I'm naturally gifted in or that I could enjoy doing? So a lot of research on the colleges. 2 weeks notice, when you're setting up a college visit, usually 2 weeks notice. You need to do it 2 weeks in advance for the college because a lot of their visits fill up. Like we had a day, I think during like fall break, a lot of times when we're off and it would be convenient to go, they're filled up. So you need to look pretty much ahead if you're planning to go at a popular time to a college, or if you have a tight window, you need to schedule that at least 2 weeks in advance. And the thing to remember when you do, students especially, when you do talk to those admissions counselors or go on the college visits, they're always kind of assessing you. So it's important to remember to present yourself well when you go. It's not just to follow the crowd and, check your phone and wear your shorts. And they're always assessing. So just put your best foot forward. Okay, GPA. I think we mentioned this, but the transcript that we send to the colleges, it only has the first 3 years on it. So it's only 9th, 10th, and 11th grades. So that's 6 semesters worth of grades. The grade point average that will be on there, it's on a 4.0 scale, but it will have the bumps, the 0.5 for every honors class and the 1 full point added to the grade for every dual enrollment or AP course. So it's a weighted GPA. And like I mentioned, they will look at the academic rigor of the classes you've taken, depending on how selective the college is. Yes, Bible does count in your GPA, so it's important to do well in Bible as it is important to do in all of your classes. A core GPA, some schools will, like University of Tennessee does this. They have certain classes that they say, these are your core classes. Like some of the electives, they're not too concerned about, so they will recalculate the GPA. The problem with that for some students is their A's came in those electives. In their core classes, they might not have done quite as well. So it's just important to realize that the GPA that some schools will actually be using is the recalculated core GPA. Also, it is not too early to start taking a look at scholarships. And some of the best scholarships are actually through the schools that you'll be applying to. So as you're doing the time with the admissions websites, make sure you look and find out what kind of financial aid they offer. Some schools offer some automatic scholarships, like if you have this GPA plus this ACT score, here's a table to tell how much money we're going to give you each year. Many schools, you can't find that, but they'll offer different special scholarships that you need to apply for. And what some of the seniors this year said that they wanted me to tell all of you is that it comes really fast. Like you finish your college applications and boom, you're up against some of the scholarship deadlines. So they said, tell them to save time for some scholarships. Like get the applications in even as soon as you can so you have time to spend on the scholarships, and start researching the scholarships early on so you know the deadlines, you know exactly what they're going to want from you so that you can be ready when the time comes.
All right, my name is Mrs. Kilburn. I have students with L through Z of the alphabet. Last name's L through Z. And I am going to talk to you about testing. And if you have been watching the news at all within the past couple of years, you'll have noticed that there have been a lot of changes in this area in particular. So tying into the GPA that Mrs. Stoffer was just talking about, colleges have changed their timelines as far as when and how and if they'll accept certain things like GPA and ACT testing and how they take those into consideration. So it used to be that they really only took the ACT up through December. But this past year, some colleges took the ACT through May because it was such an unusual year and took that into account for scholarships. And the same was true for GPA. It's hard to know what will happen next year because everything is changing so quickly, but it's important to know that that is the case so that you can kind of keep tabs on that and check with the individual colleges that you're considering to see what their policies are. So one common question that we get about ACT and SAT is, which one should I focus on, or should I take both? And that's sort of a tricky question, especially now because of all of these changes. In general, colleges do not have a preference anymore. So maybe like 10 or so years ago, the selective schools did have a preference for SAT over ACT. That is just not the case anymore. So it's important to know that. So we encourage students to focus on the test that they do best on. Keep in mind, a lot of colleges right now are trending towards test optional. So this can sort of complicate the decision-making process for your student. If they have questions, it's important for them to talk about this with a school counselor. When they apply, this past year, they were given the option to have their ACT scores considered or not considered. So for a student who is a strong test taker and does well on the ACT, it's beneficial for them to have those scores considered, even if the school is test optional, because that's more of a sure thing for admissions and for scholarships. If your student has a strong GPA, but their ACT score is not their strength, then it might be good to take the test optional route and just have them look at the GPA and not the ACT score. But sometimes there's some gray area in that, so we're glad to step in and kind of advise for the particular college that you're looking at which one would be the best path for you to take. So another common question is, should I do test prep? A lot of times test prep can be really expensive, especially the one-on-one prep, which is usually the more effective for students. So it's sort of individual, like a lot of these things is individual on the student. There's no one blanket answer to that question. So if your student is very close to a scholarship threshold, like let's say maybe they made a 27 on their first ACT, and UT is looking for a 28 or higher for scholarships, for competitive scholarships, it might be worthwhile to invest some money in test prep to get them over that threshold. But if they're sort of in the middle and it's not going to make a difference one way or another, it might be more beneficial for them to focus on other things to strengthen their application. So it just really depends on the individual circumstances for each student. A 21 is the national average for the ACT, so that is the score that qualifies students for the Hope Scholarship. So the Hope Scholarship is an either or. It's an either a 21 on the ACT or a 3.0 GPA. There is additional scholarship money offered through the state of Tennessee. It's called the General Assembly Merit Scholarship. That one is a 29 on the ACT and a 3.75 GPA. So that one is both. They would need to have both the 29 and the 3.75 GPA. Keep in mind, we mentioned that things are changing this year. So test optional for admissions does not mean that the college is test optional for scholarships. So it's important to know their policy on scholarships. And even if they are test optional for scholarships, it's possible that that could, like we said, the ACT, if your student has a high ACT score, it's more of a sure thing to submit their ACT score than to kind of bank on the test optional path for scholarships. So it depends on the student's score. We can look that over with them, but most of the time if they have a high ACT score, it's a safer bet to submit that for scholarship consideration. Also, scores must be sent directly from ACT. This always causes a lot of confusion in the fall because students aren't sure what they should send and what we send. School counselors send transcripts and letters of recommendation for students. Students send their application, their ACT scores, and their dual enrollment scores, or their dual enrollment transcripts. Also, another big change this year is that SAT did away with subject tests. So you might see in some old literature, if you have an old handbook, it talks about subject tests. That is no longer a factor this year. So sometimes selective schools would require subject tests, but they have done away with that as of this year. Another common question is, should I take the ACT plus writing? And that's another tricky one. So how you would find out is there's actually, you can just Google it. There's a list of colleges that require the ACT plus writing, and it's sort of hard to predict. So it's not just the selective colleges, like Clemson requires the ACT plus writing. So it's sort of, you just have to look at the list and see if any of the colleges that you're interested in applying to require that. If so, in general, we say take it sooner than later so that you can just get it done and out of the way, because if you're taking it on your third or fourth or fifth try of the ACT, you might not be as fresh as your first try. So it's best to go ahead and knock that out and just get it completed if you do need that. If you don't, if your college does not need the ACT plus writing, it's not necessary to take that, because chances are the college is probably going to have a writing portion of their application, and that's what they're going to look at more than the ACT plus writing. All right. College readiness benchmarks. So these are just scores that kind of help to give you an idea how on track your student is in each subject area. So for English, the benchmark is ACT is 18, and that ties into English Comp. So that's like the freshman English course that all students take. So that, what that says is that a student has a 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher and a 75% chance of obtaining a C or higher. So this just tells you how on track your student is for college. If there is a a subject that they're not meeting the benchmark in, that's just an indication that maybe they need some more strengthening of their skills in that subject area. Math is a 22, reading is a 22, and so math ties into algebra. That's freshman algebra in college. Reading ties into social science and humanities, and science ties into biology. The science score is very high. So that 23, a lot of students, this is the one that students are most likely to miss, is the science benchmark. The reason for that is, like, if you think about it, every student that goes into college takes English comp. So it's a gen ed requirement. All students are taking it. English majors take it. Science majors take it. Every major takes English comp. That's not necessarily true for biology. So like an English major may choose like a geology class instead of biology as their science because they maybe don't need that biology credit if they're not a science major. So the science score is comparing all students to science majors, and not all students are science majors. So it's a little bit harder to hit that benchmark, just to give you some background on that. All right, essays. This is such an important topic. There is a lot more detail on this topic in your handbook, which is really true of all of the topics we're talking about tonight. So I would encourage you to look at that material later on, but just overall, UT, because it's a common school that students apply to, I've just got listed the different essay prompts that they have. The first one is the Common App prompt, which every student that applies is going to complete this essay. The Common App prompt, you can just Google it and find it online. There's usually 7 questions, and students just get to pick whichever question they feel most inclined to write about. There's no better question. There's no one that they give favor to. It's just whatever one they feel like they can write the best essay about. The personal statement is optional. So what our admissions reps at UT have said about the personal statement is this is really for students who are sort of on the edge, who may or may not get admitted. This is not students with a above average ACT score, above average GPA. This is students who are just want to make sure that they have every possible consideration to ensure their admission, and they're maybe in that gray area of might or might not be admitted to UT. It gives them an opportunity to tell them one more thing that's not included in their application. So this is something that would help the admissions reps get to know them. It's something that's not already listed in their application. Maybe it's a challenge that they've overcome. Maybe it's a personal character quality or a story that just shows them something special about the student. It's about 1 page in length, single-spaced, and it's really important on all of these essays, whatever essays you write for college, to have them proofread. So we recommend that students have them proofread by a parent, a school counselor, and an English teacher. We're all looking for different things. So your parent is looking for authenticity, and they're looking to make sure that you're not selling yourself short. Sometimes students will try to be really humble, and they'll try to just sort of have a lot of humility in their essay. This is not the time for that. So you don't want to sound arrogant and overconfident, but you also don't want to shortchange yourself here. English teachers are looking for grammar and structure, and school counselors are looking for what we call the wow factor, which is making sure that it's meeting the expectations of what admissions are looking for and making your student put themselves in the best light possible in terms of admissions. All right, the third essay that UT offered this year was an optional essay about the pandemic. So the question was, did the pandemic influence you in any particular way? So the reason that they did this was because they, I think, were concerned that every student would write about the pandemic, and they did not want to read thousands and thousands and thousands of essays about the effect of COVID-19 on each individual student. So they separated it out, and they made it its own essay. But what they say is, only write this essay if it really, really, really significantly impacted you. Okay, so this might be like, I had to move to a different state my senior year of high school, or this might be both of my parents changed employment, or this might be something really substantial. If it did not affect your student in a substantial way, that's okay. It won't hurt them not to have this essay completed. It's just an option for them to share if it did. The last essay is not on the regular application, but it's on the competitive scholarships and honors application. The regular application is due November 1st, and then once a student completes the regular application, they get an invitation for the competitive scholarship and honors application. That essay has always been on leadership. So what we tell students is if they plan to complete that essay, it's important not to write their essay on leadership for the first essay. They probably want to save that for the scholarship essay. I believe that has changed as of this past year, though, for UT. So in the past, the honors program and scholarships had access to all of the application materials. This past year, UT started implementing a new process where they do not have access to those materials anymore. It's like a completely separate application. So in that case, they would not have read the essay that students used for application purposes, and it's possible to use the same essay. Now, will that still be the case this coming year? Probably, but it would be wise to check. So, topics to avoid. So, this would include cliche, difficulties that you haven't overcome, and common topics such as sports, mission trips, and other things. So, every senior boy, it seems like, wants to write an essay on their sports experience. And it's not that that's not valuable. It is so valuable, and colleges do value that in terms of your application. But it's really important on these essays to write about something that sets yourself apart and is memorable. So sports is a very difficult topic to do that on. It can be done. It's just really difficult. So if you're determined to write about sports, make sure you're talking with a school counselor about how to make that a standout essay. Difficulties you haven't overcome, so like dark topics or heavy topics, depression, different things, different struggles. It's good to show some vulnerability in these essays because it makes you seem personable, but it's important not to overshare and to do that very carefully. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing an essay topic. The best essays that I have read over the years tell a story. So as you're writing your essay, a lot of times students just sort of default to the English research paper style essay, the 5-paragraph essay. I would say consider a different option. Think about what you would like to read if you were reading an essay. College admissions reps a lot of times are just out of college. They're younger students or younger people who have similar interests as you might. And so just think about what you would like to read if you were reading an essay. Stories almost always shine and set themselves apart in this process. So if you can, one of the things that we tell students to help with this is show, don't tell. So rather than just listing off all of the things that are in your application, which they already have, students are sometimes tempted to do that because they want to make sure that college admissions reps know all of the things that are important about them. They already know that in your application. So think about writing a story for your essay. And maybe it's a challenge that you've overcome, or maybe it's a test that you studied really hard and learned an important lesson about. But stories are really powerful in this process. So we talked about do not list the things on your application. All right, we're going to move on to letters of recommendation. So Mrs. Stauffer touched on this a little bit, and she mentioned that it's important to choose a high school teacher. Sometimes students will ask us if it's okay to use a middle school teacher for these letters of recommendation. Absolutely not recommended. The reason for that is, from an admissions rep's perspective, if a student was to go back and use a middle school teacher, what that could communicate is you've gone all 4 years in high school and you didn't develop a significant relationship with any of your high school teachers, and none of them have a positive thing to say about you. We know that that's not true, but that could be the perception. So it's really important not to use middle school teachers for these essays. Also, you're not going to use coaches. Okay, these are academic letters of recommendation, so they're really looking for a teacher and or a school counselor. So the most that you could possibly need typically is 2 teachers and 1 counselor letter. It's really important that you do not ask for extra letters of recommendation. These letters take a lot of time, and teachers and counselors are glad to help with these letters. But what we always tell students is, think about, we have, on average, usually a class of about 100 seniors. If every senior asks for just one extra letter, and it takes about 2 hours to write a really good letter of recommendation, that's about 200 hours of extra unnecessary writing. So do not ask for extra letters. Just make sure you know how many letters your colleges require and ask for that amount of letters. So who will you choose when you ask for letters of recommendation? We say, choose the people who know you best, and they always seem to write the best letters. There are a few exceptions to this. Sometimes colleges, like in the STEM fields, they want like a math and a science teacher, and they'll clearly communicate that on the application, that they are looking for that. But in general, if that's not the case, we encourage you to just think about who knows you best and who can write the best letter. Keep in mind that 3 weeks of notice is needed because especially senior teachers, a lot of them are getting so many requests that if all of the seniors wait until the last week, they can't possibly complete all of those letters in addition to their regular teaching requirements. So it's important to give them time to complete a good letter. The process for requesting letters is that you would ask them in person first. If a teacher shows any hesitation, it's important just to say, okay, and ask a different teacher, because you want to make sure that the teacher feels comfortable and confident in writing your letter of recommendation and that they have time to do it in the time frame that you need it done. If they do say yes, then you're going to go into Naviance, submit a request for a letter of recommendation, and that will allow them to upload it to your portal. We really encourage you to complete a teacher self-evaluation form. This just gives the teacher some really good content to include in your letter. Same thing goes for teacher letters as what we just talked about, essays. Show, don't tell. They do not want teachers or counselors to just list off the things that are on the resume or on the application. They want a more qualitative perspective on the student. So the best way to do this is to give examples, to give stories. This self-evaluation form, which is in your handbook, provides you, has you answer some questions that provides your school counselor and your teacher with the material that would result in a really good letter. So it's important to get that submitted to your teacher or your counselor before they write the letter. All right, Common App quirks. There are a lot of Common App quirks. So there are 3 different types of application in general. When you apply, the first one is institutional. And this is like if you go to the college's website and it clicks and there's a button that says apply now, it's usually the institutional app, like for UT. You just apply straight through their website and that's their own application. Common App is another option. So Common App, you're going to go to www.commonapp.org and they have a list of colleges that accept the Common App. In general, if you're applying to 3 or more colleges that accept a Common App, it's worth your time. If you're applying to 1 or 2 colleges that accept the Common App, not so much, because it's a lot of extra work if it's just 1 or 2. So if you do apply Common App, all materials must be submitted before anything can get sent. So what this means is, like let's say you need 2 teacher letters and a counselor letter. In order for one of your counselors to send all of your materials, both teacher letters, both of the teacher forms, the counselor letter, the counselor form, the transcript, and the schedule, everything has to be uploaded to your Naviance account. So sometimes this can kind of slow the process. This is another reason that we say if you're only applying to 1 or 2, it's best to apply directly through the institution and not use Common App because it's quicker for us to send things. We can send things individually as they're uploaded if you don't do Common App. Otherwise, with Common App, we have to wait until every document is loaded before we can click send. Also, when you log into Naviance, the Common App status has to be selected. So next to the college that you're applying to, it's going to say CA in a little box, and it'll have a question mark. So you need to click next to that, and you're going to select direct to institution or Common App to let us know which one you're going to do. It will not let us send materials until you select that Common App status. Also, teachers need to be notified if you're applying Common App because there's one extra form that they need to complete if you're applying Common App. And the last thing is your Common App needs to be synced with Naviance. So how you do that is you go in and you fill out the FERPA form on your Common App, and that will allow you to go to Naviance, click sync. We can help you with that if you have trouble, but that will sync up those accounts so that when we send your materials, everything matches up beautifully. All right, NCAA, so student athletes. If you plan on playing a sport in college, there's two different athletic divisions, NAIA and NCAA. So for NCAA, it's especially important to create an account like now. And so sometime before the end of your junior year, you're going to create a student clearinghouse account, and then we will send transcripts in the middle of June. So your transcripts from junior year will get sent this June, and your transcripts from senior year will get sent next June. So that will just help to make sure that you're on track for having all of your documentation submitted. It's important that you make sure that you are meeting the academic eligibility requirements for whichever division you're competing for. So Division I has really stringent academic requirements. They have a sliding scale of GPA versus ACT score. You can find that online, or we have those materials. I think that it's actually in your college advising handbook, the sliding scale. So you can just check to make sure that you are on track for that. Also, another thing to be aware of with NCAA is recruiting rules. So when you take visits, there's official visits, unofficial visits. You need to make sure that you know how that process works, and the athletic office is going to be your point of contact for that. All right, scholarships and financial aid. I'm not going to go very deep into this because we have a lot of meetings about this in the fall, and a lot of information that's disseminated in the fall. Right now, the priority is applications, and in the fall, there's going to be several things that open up. So in general, there are 3 different types of scholarships. Federal and state is the first type. Institutional is the second type, and then private. Federal and state is like your Hope Scholarship, Tennessee Promise, any money that's offered through the state of Tennessee or the federal government. Institutional is money that's offered from the college directly. It could be merit-based, it could be need-based, but it's money that is available through the college or university you're applying to. Private scholarships are things that you find online. You might go to fastweb.com, scholarships.com, goingmerry.com. There's lots of websites. If you do that, one piece of advice, do not use your primary email address because they are going to spam the daylights out of that email. So you might even just want to create a new email that you use just for this purpose so that after the college app season is over, you can just stop checking that email and don't have to worry about continuing to get that material. The biggest chunk of money is typically federal and state. So you're like your Hope Scholarship, your Tennessee Promise, and then institutional, and then private. Sometimes I think students and parents hear rumors that there's like all of these unclaimed thousands of dollars in private scholarships if you just take the time to do those applications. That's really not so much the case. Private scholarships, you're going to spend a lot of time kind of sifting through these applications. It might take hours, and you just really have to commit yourself to that if you want to do it. And it's typically not the biggest chunk of money that students get, private scholarships. All right, the FAFSA opens up on October 1st, and you have until February 1st to complete it. So make sure not to apply before October 1st. Sometimes parents will kind of get eager to get things done, and they'll try to apply in like August or September, and they fill out last year's FAFSA on accident, and then they have to redo it anyways, and it causes a lot of stress and confusion. The FAFSA will not open before October 1st, so even if you see it online, know that that is for students who have already graduated. So you're going to wait till October 1st, but get that done before February 1st. Some students will need to complete the CSS profile. So that's some really detailed financial information. It's usually for the more selective private schools that have endowments and funds that they are allocating themselves. And it's going to ask you for like home equity information, retirement fund information, a lot more detailed information about your financial assets. Submit copies of every award to the school counseling office. So in May, at graduation, we announce a grand total of scholarships. So once you start getting scholarship offers, whether you accept them or not, it's important to forward those to your school counselor so we can keep track of those and announce that grand total at graduation for your class. We don't disclose individual offers that students received. Another thing about scholarships and financial aid is that sometimes parents and students get confused in this net price versus total cost of attendance. So the total cost of attendance is like the sticker price on the vehicle in the car sales lot. Most people don't end up paying that exact number because of the net price. So net price factors in scholarships and financial aid and all of the other things that are going to be taken into consideration. Most colleges will, well, actually now all colleges will have what's called a net price calculator on their website. The federal government requires it. So this can help you sort of calculate the cost for your student individually. It's not an exact science, but it kind of gives you a ballpark idea of what they're looking for in terms of final cost. So sometimes where this is really important to know is, like if your student is applying to a private school, like let's say Maryville College is a great example, or Lipscomb University, the total cost of attendance might look out of the realm of possibility for your family, but it's important to know that they typically offer more in terms of scholarships and financial aid awards, and often come in to be close to the same net price as like UT. So it's good to know that, and it's important not to factor out a school just because of their listed total cost of attendance. Also, in the fall, we mentioned there's going to be some more meetings. There's something called the FAFSA Frenzy. This is a meeting where a representative from TSAC will come and help you fill out the FAFSA if you need help with that. And then there's a financial aid meeting, which also gives you a lot more detailed information about scholarships and financial aid. So what should you be doing now? Preparing for taking the ACT, taking college visits. If you haven't taken visits yet, I think a lot of times seniors think, oh, I'll just do that senior year. And what they don't realize is between August 1st and November 1st, their whole time and focus is on completing their application. So they don't really have a whole lot of time to do visits, and senior year is full of events and stuff, so it can be hard to fit visits in. So if you haven't started yet, it's good to just go ahead and schedule some visits on the calendar. The best time to go is when college is in session. So just keep in mind, summer may or may not give you the best picture of what it's like to be a student there because their campus is probably not at full capacity. So just kind of keep that in mind if you do take a visit during the summer. Requesting letters of recommendation. So remember, you need to give 3 weeks notice. So it might feel early to request a letter of recommendation now, but boy, you'll be glad in the fall that you have one less thing to do during the college app process. So before the end of this school year, it's not too early to request letters of recommendation. In fact, I think a lot of your teachers would be glad to get a few checked off their list before the summer. So it'd be good to go ahead and get that completed now. Also, meet with your school counselor. The best way that we can help you through this process is individually, because each student has such an individual story and such an individual perspective. And Mrs. Stauffer mentioned run your own race. That's so important. So meeting individually with students and their parents is so helpful to us to just kind of know where you're at and where we can help. Plan summer opportunities. This is your last summer to get things on your resume for college apps. So Mrs. Stauffer mentioned the importance of completing your capstone this summer. That'd be a really valuable experience to include in your college apps, but also job shadowing, interning, summer extracurricular opportunities. Anything that you can fit in is a valuable thing to consider for the summer. There are 2 forms that you got. So it says complete your forms by April 30th. When you came in, there's this diploma self-check. On this form, you're only going to complete one of the 2 sides. So if you're going for the honors diploma, you'll complete that side. If you're going for the standard diploma, you'll complete that side. And make sure to turn it in to your school counselor by April 30th. Also, the senior diploma name self-check form. This is how your name will appear on your diploma. So it's very important that you have that filled out for us so that we know how to print that on your diploma. And another important thing on here is the release for transcripts. So in the fall, if this is not turned in and filled out and turned in, we cannot send transcripts until a parent has authorized us to do that. So it's better to go ahead and get that taken care of now so that there's no delay in the fall when your student requests transcripts. Also on the back of this sheet is the college reminder. It might be good to take a picture of this if you turn in the paper form just so that you still have this information after it's been submitted. Maybe save it to your desktop. because it has just some really important points for senior year. Also, pray for God's leading. Sometimes when we get busy, it's easy to forget this. It's really important that we don't do that, because as we've walked through with students through the college application process, the best stories are the ones where students really seek out God's leading. And sometimes God's leading doesn't really make sense to us, right? Because his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts, but it's always best. And so it's hard to see the big picture in the way that he does, and it's really important to depend on that throughout this process. All right, another thing that's really important is not to let anything steal your joy. As you navigate these next few months, sometimes it can get busy, sometimes it might feel stressful, but one thing I've been talking about in the classroom all day today is the difference between happiness and joy, and how happiness is sort of dependent on our circumstances, and joy is something special that we have as believers that isn't dependent on our circumstances, right? James 1:2 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you experience trials of various kinds." And sometimes you're going to encounter trials, maybe through this process or maybe in other areas of life, but as believers, we have access to a peace and joy that surpass understanding. And I would just encourage you to guard your hearts and guard your minds through this process, and not to lose sight of the bigger picture. Sometimes stress and worry and fear and doubt can try to creep in and steal that from you. And I would just encourage you not to let that happen. And if you feel like that's starting to happen, come meet with your school counselor, and we can help to just encourage you and walk with you through that and pray over you. And that's one of the things that we love and enjoy most about our role as your counselor. So we're here to help. This is our contact information. So if you need anything, we're going to stay to answer some questions. We do have another meeting coming up after this one. But if you think of questions later, you can shoot us an email, give us a call, or stop by and schedule an appointment to meet with us. We're so thankful that you came tonight. Yes.
Since you're all in my part of the alphabet, please don't be frightened by what happened tonight. I know this was a massive amount of information. So what we're really trying to do is expose you to everything. We don't expect you to walk away understanding exactly what we just said. So we're here to really walk you. I mean, that's what we do. When school starts, we are working with seniors the whole time until the 1st of November. So there's lots of time to get it sorted out. Do not be frightened. And if you have time before we break for summer, please make an appointment, and you and your student come and see me, and we'll talk about it. And I think it'll be a lot clearer once you have a little time to digest all that was said tonight.
Yeah, and even over the summer, just remember that we are here sort of intermittently throughout the summer. So if that timing works better for you, we can probably figure out a time to make that work as well. But let's take a moment to just close in prayer. Dear Lord, I thank you for this time that we've had together to just think about the future and all that you have in store for these students. God, I pray that you would give us peace and joy that surpass understanding, and that we would cling to the hope that we have in you and the partnership that we share with each other through this process. God, I thank you for each student and the many opportunities that you have in store for them, the many giftings that you have equipped each of them with, and the many ways that you are at work in their lives, working all things together for their good and your glory. I pray that they would see your hand in that, and they would trust and rest in the truth of your word and the comfort of your presence. God, I thank you for these families and for the partnership that we share in the important work of discipling these children and these students. And I just pray that you would be with us, and that you would give us discernment, and that you would just cover us with your presence and your leading. Thank you for this time and for these families, and I lift them up to you and pray over them in Jesus' name. Amen.